permission to speak. Shadows hide you. I am listening. Our paths converge.
So good to see you.
Hail to you. Never lose hope.
Here for a chat.
I hear you. It has only begun. Fight on, friend!
Welcome to episode 431 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, January 25th, 2024 in the evening. Coming to you from Nomergon, Ohio, it's me, Edelweiss. From Northrend, Massachusetts, we have Wicked Good.
Hi.
From Teldrassil, California, we have Megasa.
Hello.
And from all around the world, we have you, dear listeners. As always, thank you for your reviews. If you would like to support the show but cannot do so monetarily, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast feed of choice, as it always helps other people find the show. So, there's unfortunately some grim news, which is perhaps expected with a merger, acquisition, etc., but all the same somber. And so we were thinking about doing an explanations on Sludge Warlock and then just kind of got blindsided keeping up with all the updates and seeing like, oh, is this person okay? Is this person okay? So, no explanations today. We are going to have a little bit of a longer Life and Ladder, and then we'll talk about the news. There's even an esports announcement that I'm sure we'll also spend some time on. And yeah, so Life and Ladder is sort of our sub in a little bit for explanations. I'm going to start with life stuff, since the game stuff will be a little bit longer. I finally got into a new dentist, and they recommended me to a root canal specialist because they're like, we cannot in good conscience just pop a crown on there without someone making sure that this is okay. They like took an x-ray and were like, yeah, the stuff they packed in is a little deeper than it's supposed to be. And so we could give you a crown, but we would hate for you to then later need the root canal redone and have spent all that on a crown. So that's fun. Fortunately, no pain presently, and the tooth isn't broken, which is another thing that can happen if you have a root canal and then don't have a crown for too long. So, yeah.
Well, that's something that's on brand for today, I suppose. But
so that's kind of my life stuff apart from regular. And then ladder, I've been playing Miracle Rogue, and I've been playing a lot of Arena. And both are fun, but honestly, Arena has felt great because I just hate Druid so much. And it is so frustrating when they discover a minion and you're just like, not 20, not 20, not 20. And then they gain 20 armor, and I was just like, come on.
And then you also know you're going to have 5 Naga Giants coming down very shortly.
Yeah. But the arena changes are awesome. The treasure has more mixed sentiment within the arena community. I enjoy having the treasure at the end, but I understand that there's some pretty big power disparities. The legendary at the beginning, I think, Vinny, is just a game changer. Yeah. Like, I had a rogue that I went 12-1 with, where I got Mimiron and picked up 3, like, from the scrap heap or whatever it's called.
Oh, wow. Oh. Yeah, and that's not something you could have done if you saw him later.
Yeah, and then Inventomatic, is that what it's called? The one that where gets an extra +1/+1?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it sounds right enough.
So
it's just usually I just pronounce that "ugh" when I see it.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. So a couple of times I just stuck one of those, and either gave it stealth or whatever, and then was like, okay, make it huge, win Fury. I guess I win now. And considering some of the Warlock builds people have in Arena, you kind of need that. Sludge is good in Standard and Arena. Yeah, I mean, you two know all about Sludge Warlock.
Yeah. I mean, well, okay. So I I was started the week out playing Plague DK, because I figured out that maybe this is a little bit nihilistic of me, but I was basically like, okay, it seems like the meta is like slow and greedy enough that Plague DK is actually the correct pick. And I saw Pete said posted a list that he took to like 9 legend.
Mhm.
So I tried that, and that went okay until I had a game against a thief rogue where I drew 0 plague generation in the first top half of my deck, which I don't know how that even happens. Like, it's not like there's just like 2 plagues. Like, there's a whole bunch. Like no weapons, no Helia, no down with the ship, no death rattle dude, like nothing. And I'm sitting here with like 2 chained guardians at 11 mana for like I'm at 10 mana and I still can't play them. I played out a tomb trader as a 3 mana 4/3 just to get it out of my hand. and, and, and I did end up at like 45 health in that game because the Primus was the most expensive minion that I had access to when I resurrected it from the excavate. So I was able to get up to 45, but it didn't matter because I couldn't really do any damage or play half the cards in my hand until it. So I'm like, okay, that's not great. And then later on in the week, I saw Clark posted a Sludge Warlock build where he basically said something to the effect of, in classic Clark Hellscream style, I cut the bad cards and now this deck is busted. And like he cut so there's been a whole bunch of different builds of Sludge Warlock over the past week. Some of them are running the 6/8 that discards 2 cards um or destroys a mana crystal, or you could force to do neither. There are some that are just running more discard, that's running furnace fuel, and he's basically like, don't run the discards, don't run the furnace fuel, don't run the tour guide. Monstrous Form is the way to go. Monstrous Form, if you've forgotten, is a 1 mana spell. A minion give a minion +3/+3 till the beginning of your next turn. So you keep the Forge of Wills, but you have the Monstrous Form to be able to just make any minion into something that is Forge of Wills worthy. I have to specify Forge of Wills because I don't want it to be like Forge the mechanic, which is confusing enough. But I think I was at 7,500 because I had been just trying a whole bunch of stuff and nothing was working. Yesterday morning, I'm at about 3,000 now. I think I've lost 1 game, which was to Thaddeus on 6. From a druid. Like, that was like, they had how, like, I don't even know if they had like coin pouches or they just, just had all the ramp and then went into Nightshade Bud, pull Thaddeus, and then just went to town on 6. But that's like the only game I've lost. I've been playing mirrors. I've been beating rogues, which is pretty much like, that's the only that's the only requirement I have is, can I beat a rogue? And I can. Like, everything else is gravy as long as I can beat rogue at this point. So, but I've been beating rogues fairly consistently. I've been beating Highlander warriors pretty consistently. I've played plenty of mirrors against people who still have like tour guides or the 6/8 or whatever in their decks, and I've just been smoking them even when they get optimal draws. I had one game where I got my chaos creation summoned the new death rattle minion that then summons 2 death rattles that cost 3 or less, and that summoned the plague death rattle. So I got a mage down to 2, and then they died the next turn because they drew one of the plagues, which was delightful.
Oh, but have you gotten Sif off of that?
I have not gotten Sif off of that. That would be something.
Usually that just means I've gotten it twice. In one case, it just meant I won more. In another case, it meant I got a surprise lethal because I had played it to clear the board, and then there was going to be an extra one that would go face, and then they would survive. Except not when it's Sif.
Yeah, and the games are incredibly fast. And I had an epiphany this week, which is that when everything in the meta is super greedy, then it is actually the correct control strategy to hit people in the face.
I screenshotted this when you put it in the Discord. And Hat was like, all caps, I've only been saying this to you for the past 2 years.
Longer than that. A lot longer than that. But yeah, so I'm just controlling people in the face. And, you know, that's just the way. Because, I mean, that's all I want to do is I want to feel like I'm playing, like I'm not bringing a knife to a gunfight, right? And, like, this is when I can't play control, then I just play to counter those strategies. And countering those strategies is kill until they're dead. So that's what I'm gonna do. But yeah, and I did play some Arena too. I will say Holy Book is a very good treasure if you can get it. The 8 mana spell that silences a minion and summons a 10/10 copy of it, because a lot of decks have really expensive death rattles at the top end. I got a Koligarn off one of them. That was delightful.
Oh no!
So they had played a Koligarn, and then I copied it, and then took their. I don't even know if I took their Koligarn. No, it was already dead. I just took something else off the board, and then immediately played it, and it was that was pretty good. I mean, there were a bunch of like the 8 drop that drops a 7 drop or whatever. It's like, nope, I'll take that. That's fine. You know.
It's been so refreshing to return to Arena and be like, oh yeah, this is where, you know, these certain cards are totally playable or even good, right? Like a lot of the in standard bad value generation that people are like, why did they print this? It's like, this is amazing in Arena. You know, this is the value. Or like Koligarn is just almost
he's OP there.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if you don't deal with him, you just don't get to play minions. Like, because they're gonna take your best one every turn and just play it. It reminds me of when I would draft Magic and stuff, right? And there's certain things that are just like, yeah, I mean, this never sees play into a standard deck, but it is a bomb in draft or sealed. And I missed that. It's nice having that extra perspective on cards in Hearthstone, and Arena's really great right now. So I think if you haven't given it a shot, like now is definitely the time to try Arena, because I think it's fun getting to try and build around in a limited format, a legendary that you pick at the beginning, and sometimes you just pick like something that is solid power level because you don't get a build around. And then just seeing all the various cards from in this new light of just, I mean, their Shadow Word Steel is bonkers. Like,
even like I had a Death Knight run where I drafted a couple of copies of Mismatch Fossils, which is the 3 mana discover, a beast, discover an undead, swap their stats. So like, especially when you're a Death Knight and there are not as many beasts in the way of Snowflipper Penguin, like that. And there are a lot of big undeads. Like that card is actually decent in Arena. Like I would never put it in a constructed deck, but that card actually did some work in Arena. So it's it's been fun going back to it. I don't know that I'm gonna go past when I've used up my tavern tickets, but at least I'm enjoying. I think like having played it a little bit more, the two things that would keep me from playing it more. One is that I really wish you could like overdraft by 5 and then cut 5 cards.
Yeah.
Just to like get rid of, because like when they started with Arena, you didn't have that option. Like in Constructed, you have the option to like put more cards in your deck than you can finish, and then you have to cut some. And I would love to be able to just like have a couple of like cards where I'm not sure if this is going to pan out or not, because because like I need other synergy for this to work, but I'm going to take it and see if I can hit it, and then be able to not be stuck with that if it doesn't pan out, right? Like that's kind of the thing that you do in a Magic draft is you kind of go for synergies, and sometimes you don't hit them and you can just cut those cards, but you're stuck with them in Arena once you draft them. So that's the one thing. And I think the other thing is just, I don't know how we restructure the rewards, but like, I don't really like it, or if there was like a way to play like, Phantom drafts, or just not have to spend the gold to play it. Because like I don't really want more packs from the current set, right? Like I've got all the packs I need, so it's still like an actual investment for me to play Arena. That's gold that I could be going towards the next standard rotation, right? So I think, I mean, and this is obviously if you are someone who's still building a collection, it's great because you're getting the packs. You get to play Arena and you could get more. When you have everything, then it's actually taking away from what you're going to have for the next set. So
Yeah, it was pretty hilarious to look at the 12 win reward and be like, oh, I only netted like 80
Yeah.
gold or something. Because you get a pack, you get some amount of gold and a couple of cards, right? And so I think on average, you usually get like what was considered infinite is right over 7 wins, or
Yeah.
maybe 7 wins
Yeah.
or over, right? And that's where you kind of get your gold back. But really all you're gaining then is the pack, right? Which is so a certain amount of
Yeah.
dust. And I mean, I'm fine with it because generally I'm totally good for all the cards with dust when new stuff comes out. But yeah, it is a little weird. It's particularly being used to heroic brawls, right? Which is completely
Yeah,
different
right.
structure. But looking at the rewards for Arena for 12 wins and being like, oh, huh.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if maybe as part of a restructuring, it could get trimmed down to like you try and shoot for 7 or something, maybe hit 7 before 2 losses or so. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's
I
how
mean-
it started, and then they bumped it up to 12 originally because I think it started at 7 wins.
Yeah. I mean, Magic is a lot of
Magic
their
is
stuff
7.
is 7 before 3 losses.
Yeah,
And
but you also keep all the cards you draft in Magic. So
yes, right. So there would have to be something to kind of make up for that, but yeah, or like Artifact had, which I did mostly this in Artifact, the Phantom draft what you mentioned, where like, I mean, I guess it's weird because like, well, you never keep the cards in Hearthstone, so what's the purpose of it's always Phantom draft? But if it's just like you can play Arena for no rewards,
Casual,
but it
right?
doesn't cost you
Yeah.
anything.
like casual duels like that we're losing,
Yeah.
right? Like it's this like the same concept. Like I guess it wouldn't be necessarily Phantom, but yeah.
My one worry on that, although maybe we'd rather have them there than lower standard, would be bots. I feel like bots might be better. I don't know.
There's
I
already
suppose
there's
There's
already a
already
huge problem
huge
in,
problem
in
with
Arena.
bots. Yeah.
Yeah, in Arena. Yeah.
It's like slightly different. Okay, so there's some bots in Arena. The additional problem in Arena is bot accounts, right? Where there are bots intended to draft super drafts, and then when they find one, that account is sold to, I guess, a streamer. I don't know who these
Yeah.
streamers are. But
It's such a weird economy in general,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like
but so that they can create content around, the most ludicrous draft decks you'll ever see. And so sometimes, I guess, the people who this is their main mode, they're like, yeah, I get tired sometimes of seeing people with just bananas decks, right? When I get to my,
Right. They're not as rare as they should be.
10 through 12 wins or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also think, in terms of the rewards, I have gotten to a point also where I want all the college early, so then I would much rather have a standard pack than an expansion pack. But also, I think we're a somewhat unusual
yeah, I mean,
demographic.
yeah.
But if there were, or I don't know if, this would just be too complicated to implement. If there was some way to like choose whether you got an expansion pack or a standard pack, that would be awesome.
Yeah, or like a ticket for the next expansion or something, right? Like but I'm now getting really
or if they
like...
just gave you gold and you could
Yeah.
choose to spend it on a pack if you wanted. But that might feel weird to just get your 100 gold back. But
yeah.
anyway, I do intend to check it out more. I was playing a lot of Sludge Warlock because that was originally what we were going to do our explanations on. But I want to try more Arena. I definitely learned a lot from playing it. I remember when I first started it, I was a little culture shocked by how it feels very different from Constructed. And
Yeah.
I had to watch some streamers. I was watching like Kriparian back when he was doing, that's how he got his start, I think. in order to get a sense of like the curve is really important, the value is more important.
Yeah.
So you don't have these insane synergies that you have going on in standard as often, unless you are that bot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got a great value deck and people hit you with the curve, and you just can't
you just
deal
die.
with it because
Yeah.
the tools are not as prevalent. So that happens to me with mage runs sometimes, where it's like, well, if I can keep things going, I've got this insane value engine, but I gotta survive, right?
Yeah, and you end up like, it's actually way more correct to trade in arena than it is in constructed. Like,
Mhm.
it's like a completely different mindset in terms of how you have to play. I remember there was a dream hack years ago, back before Cora and her brother were working at Blizzard, but Sir Slam, Sage, um, was in the tournament that Cora was casting, and he was primarily an arena player at the time. And then he got to constructed and he was trading, like over trading on stream. And it was like, they were really making comments about, oh, he's not used to playing constructed. He's mostly an arena player and they're supposed to trade in that situation where, in constructed you would go face. So it's a little bit different when because if you try to just like go face like you would in like is often correct in constructed, if you're not me, then you'll just get blown out because you need to be able to keep board and then go face with whatever leftover damage you have, and if you lose board, you're just done. So.
Right, you probably don't have the damage and tempo to be able to ignore the board. You need things to stick. And you probably don't have the reload in the same way that you would have in constructed.
Yeah, I mean, some of the complaints from people do come from arena metas where there are more cards that can swing a board, right? Because it's so hard to swing back, right? So, for example, the fact that the Scourge is discoverable is upsetting.
And Trial by Fire was like the best card in arena for a while. It probably still is.
Well, and before this most recent patch, the wolves in Demon Hunter, the Outcast one, that was just like,
the 6/6s, yeah,
that was just murderous. That would
Rush,
just
those are Warlock cards. I only see them when I play Chaos Creation.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so, but outside of that, most of the time you're getting value from value trades, right? And that is sort of the go-to form of card advantage is can you make some value trades, leverage hero power. Pings are very important for like finishing off minions after they've value traded. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Feels more like an undead Shadow Priest mirror back in the older one. I loved those. You have to play those decks to get those mirrors.
Oh, man.
It's a mirror where you're happy instead of a mirror where you're like, oh god. Someone pointed to a no hands before people were doing the mill druid, when people were doing the like fizzle infinite shuffle.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He ended up in a mirror, and it had been going on for like half an hour, and people were just waiting for the turn timer. I don't actually know what happened because I couldn't stay long enough.
Yeah, aggro mirrors are the few ones where I can actually tolerate it, because it's either someone gets blown out and run over, or it's the most like grindy back and forth trading little edges, until you've just run them out of stuff. And it's very odd when you think about like, oh yeah, sometimes really long games can come out of two aggro decks facing each other because they just like have to leverage those little inches of advantages.
There's always like, do you think that you can race them or do you have to trade? Right? Like, I find those like first few turns of decision making to try to figure out, or if you get behind, like, can I come back on the board or should I try to get over the top damage, or should I just concede if I'm getting run over? Although it doesn't take that long to find out if you're going to get run over if you're in that situation. Also, Donkey says that no hand conceded on turn 35 or so. Or, oh, maybe that's like 35 minutes. Anyway, long time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the old spreading plague token druids. Like, where
that was such a mess.
It was those were the worst. Like, I hated playing that deck because I knew I'd get into a mirror and it's like, I know what I'm supposed to do, but A, I never know what the right thing is to do, and B, I really don't want to.
Well, I remember at the time as well, there was like, people initially were like, yeah, you need to make sure you don't play into the plague, and then you get in this back and forth of who plagues last. And then someone was just like, yeah, but what if they don't have it? and so the game, like, you just go in as soon as you can. If they don't have it, they die. And like it changed the way that the mirror was played.
I think that also, like, control priest mirrors are low-key a way of controlling the control priest population. Because if you have too many control priests, they run into each other, and then they stop playing the deck.
That's when you get the less dedicated, less confident control priest players leaving. The real ones will stick it out. Anyway, Magay, so what have you been playing? You said Sledge Warlock, but
yes. Well, so I played a little bit of Excavate Paladin. My hot take is that while Shroomscavate may well be broken at some point, I don't think it is broken now. Because yes, you do get blown out by it sometimes, and like as Plague, sometimes I'll be like, well, if they don't have Shroomscavate and 2 Garden's Graces, then I'm fine, and then they go Garden's Grace, Shroomscavate. But when you're actually playing it, that's not too... It's much more common, at least it was for me, to just like have 2 Shroomscavates in my hand and nothing to play it on.
It's an awkward card. Like, it is not an Excavate you can just play, right? It is a win the game card that happens to also say Excavate, which is just weird.
Yeah. Or you play it, if I had 2, I would just play it in the middle to get an extra Divine Shield and an Excavate, which might be sometimes the right move, but it was still kind of awkward, and it's hard in the current deck to sometimes you whiff on enough holy spells to get your Garden's Grace down enough. The 5 mana Keeper Strength, you really feel that. So you can still get that really good Paladin 1-drops boogie down curve going. But it definitely was harder going, especially once I was higher ranks. Harder to keep the Paladin going. So I switched to Sledgelock. I've been playing like... I keep accidentally queuing the wrong list because I have like a full page of different Warlock lists with like slightly different names.
Oh my god.
Because I wanted to keep them separate in my deck tracker. So I have been trying... I started with a list that Dawn in the Discord had posted and did really well with it. It was a very like just sludge-focused fatigue package deck, so no Forge of Wills, and all of the self-damage. Actually had a couple of Fellstring Harps, which fell out, although VS just put them back in their fatigue package version, which I actually agree with that, or at least running one, because the thing is you don't play it on 1, because you want your Imprisoned Horrors to get discounted.
Oh, you just solved that by not playing Imprisoned Horrors and playing better cards.
You can play both. Because sometimes the Imprisoned Horrors just come down and it's a free... I'm not... well, in that version, you're not playing... I don't know if you actually have room if you're playing Forge of Wills, even though it's a 5/5. Like, you're playing that if you're not playing Forge of Wills. That's how you get your free body without having to spend 3 mana on the Forge of Wills, sometimes without a target. But you still... If you're doing that much damage to yourself, like, you're doing this more because you want to be running the fatigue package, because Crescendo is amazing, especially when you get it with Top Card, but even if you don't. So because you want to be running the fatigue package, you may as well also run Imprisoned Horror, but then you do so much damage to yourself. Sometimes you just need to buy yourself a turn or 2, and the Harp is useful for that. After you've already taken a bunch of damage, it not only blocks damage, but heals you back up 6.
Yeah.
If you
There are
have
so
many
builds of this deck. It's actually kind of crazy. And like, they're all pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, like
Yeah.
it's like we're gonna get like really pedantic about like differences, but like Clark's List is running the full fatigue package, and I never really feel like I'm getting too low. But it's also probably because I'm not tapping because I'm not running tour guide, right?
Mhm.
So like I'm not. It maybe that's part of the difference is that if you're also tapping or if you're missing your drops or you're playing a fell string harp to tap or like whatever, like you're playing more cheap stuff so you have more room to tap. I feel like the curve works out in the other list enough that I never like I'm lowish, but usually that I'm about to kill him, so I don't really
Well,
care,
Clark's I think is more of a slight tempo loss early spike. Whereas
Yeah.
the version I was playing was more of it's an aggro that then has a burn plan. So I think you can go at it sort of multiple
Yeah.
ways. And then there's versions like Scoob D from the Discord has a more like kind of like Clark's List, but even more like there's a Dark Hundred Theer in it. Really leaning into the Forge of Wills. And I know they're finding that useful in matchups, like especially like a Plague Decay matchup where they're shuffling your sludges around. They have the Tomb Trader, so your 3/3s are all dead. This gives you more big threats.
Yeah. And Waste Remover is good against the plagues too, just because it gets rid of some of them.
It does get rid of, when I've been facing the plagues, you just go for like big stats. I cut fracking because I feel like I have Waste Remover and I have Chaos Creation. Do I need fracking? But it is a way to draw without damaging yourself. I could see that argument.
Yeah. It fixes your curve too, like sometimes you just like play fracking on one to make sure that you get like a Baritone Imp or a Disposal Assistant on two to make sure that you're going to hit your curve, the rest of your curve. Because you can miss one, but if you miss 1 and 2, you're in trouble.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think really if you're listening to this, like, and you're like, what Scourge Warlock do I play? The answer is kind of whatever one you want. Like it's a hard decision because they're kind of all good.
Some of them play pretty differently, right? Like I think the Imprisoned Horror ones versus the
Forge one plays pretty different, right? Like
yeah,
the one that runs like the Gloomstone Guardians, that was the card I couldn't remember before.
Right.
Like
because
that plays pretty differently. Yeah.
Right, because you actively want to discard the right things, so you're more taking advantage of putting sludges in your hand, and also you have the draw two things. So
that fuel. Yeah.
Right. So if you discard those from the 6/8 taunt, right, that's pretty solid. You're basically you're never forging that minion, right? You're just playing it.
Tell
and
that
discarding.
to my opponents. Because I've seen a lot of people forging that minion, and I'm like, good job. You take that. Yeah, you spend that 2 mana doing nothing. I'm completely okay with this.
Like you forge it in a hand lock, which presently doesn't exist, but I can imagine a future where it will, right? Where Forge of Wills plus, that and the 4 mana 7/7 taunt, like that's a good package. And I feel like in a future meta we may see that show up as some kind of hand lock, but and you forge it in Druid, but I don't think you ever want to be forging it in the sludge.
Not in the stack. Yeah.
No,
or I mean, unless it's like you top deck it and it's really late, right? And even
blow
then,
up a mana crystal, right? Like,
yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're like, I absolutely need to not discard my Popgar or something like that,
or Crescendo. Yeah.
Yeah, and also part of this deck, is like I think it makes sense that we're playing slightly different versions because I'm going for the like, even though I'm playing Fellstring Heart, take a bunch of damage, just be as aggressive as possible early board, and then just like burn over the top, less of the big minion spike. So I think it depends if you're interested in this deck, which it is really fun. I recommend like try a couple different versions. I can put some links in the show notes, and see what one clicks with you, or if you happen to have some cards and not other cards. There's a lot of different versions that you're likely to have success with, or that might have a slight edge in whatever your pocket meta happens to be.
See, the Warlock I was playing is totally different. Warlock I was playing.
Really? Don't say.
It's Fatigue Warlock.
Is this the Insanity?
It is.
Approaching Insanity? Yeah.
Yeah. And that felt great. The new Soul Freeze is pretty filthy. You've got double Soul Freeze and a Glacial Shard. And I don't know how it would fare in this now very sludge-dominated meta. I'm not sure how well that goes for me. I'm sure it sort of depends. But that deck felt pretty solid as combos go. It's built in a pretty elegant way where the only shadow spells are Encroaching Insanity and Defile. So if you know you're not going to need to Defile, you can just play an Encroaching Insanity on curve against a warrior and know that it's loaded up for Lady Darkvein when you need it.
We should probably explain to people who haven't seen this combo what it is.
Sure. So, Encroaching Insanity is the 3-mana Warlock Shadow spell that makes both players take fatigue twice. So you take 1, and then you take 2, assuming neither of you have taken any yet. The only other fatigue cards in this deck for the Warlock are actually the Crescendos. Oh, no, it also has the one that makes imps.
It looks
Crazed
like
Conductor.
I'm looking at the VS list, and it's running both Baritone Imp and Crazed Conductor, apparently.
Yeah, no. Clark's didn't have Baritone.
Okay.
But Conductor, right? If you Encroaching Insanity and then Conductor, like that's just a lot of stats, right? Baritone Imp, not so much worth it because it's just a big minion.
It's one more tick, basically.
Yeah. So you're just focused on like minimizing the damage you take. Play a Defile early if you have to control things, but then once you've played an Encroaching Insanity, do your best to just save that there so that when you play Lady Darkvein, it'll have Encroaching Insanity in there as your shadow spell. And the maximum damage is you've played 2 Encroaching Insanities, the second one doing, 3 and then 4. And then you Lady Darkvein, Shallow Grave. With the last mana, sorry, because otherwise you would die, is the 10th mana is used for the...
Harp? Yeah.
No, not Harp.
Void Virtuoso.
Yeah, Virtuoso.
Oh, okay. That's
so,
not even in the VS list. Oh, no, it is. Never mind.
You are...
I don't know. I don't know how the alphabet is organized. Don't mind me.
So you're immune, and then each one of these will trigger twice because of Shallow Grave. So it'll be they fatigue for 5 and 6, then 7 and 8, then 9 and 10, then 11 and 12. It's an insane amount of damage. It's very good against Warrior, although a lot of things are. And you can even get there against Druid if you manage to like get things rolling before they do process you, which they don't always have it early on. So yeah, that was a lot of fun, and I just got sidetracked with Arena and other games. So downloaded Pixelborn and bought Lorcana cards, so I'm starting on that path as well.
I should do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should probably do that. See if I also see if my students. There's a Magic the Gathering club at my school, but it's at lunch, and the students there's not time to get lunch and finish a Magic the Gathering game, especially if you don't totally know what you're doing, which my students don't, and you're way too hesitant to attack, even though I keep saying attack each other, please.
Just play mono red. The games will go fast enough.
Yeah, I should just make new decks for them that are just all aggro, of it. One of them did get down a creature that whenever it takes creature damage, it just gets a +1/+1 on it. And the other person literally had nothing in his deck that could possibly deal with that. So, but it was going to take so long for him to actually lose. And I'm like, this is like the blood DK lesson. Just there are things that can deal with this, but not in your deck.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Pixelborn is the not official digitized version of Lorcana. So we'll see how long it lasts, but for now, it's very cool that, particularly since distribution was tough, and so not everyone has access to Lorcana cards, Pixelborn lets people just play with all the cards online. It's it's not, it cannot be a thing that makes money or an official product So everyone just has all the cards and can sandbox.
That is awesome, and I can't imagine how long it is for this world,
Yeah.
but
It's been around for a while.
I mean, I have to assume they know about it. It's like either they don't know about it or they're sort of like, well, honestly, while we're still working on building this up, if this increases hype for the game and gets people interested in playing until it's actually affecting their bottom line, like
yeah,
could
it
just
gets more
leave it and
people
it
to
helps
try
them,
it.
you know?
Yeah, I could see it's a much lower barrier to entry than getting into a new card game with physical cards. So
Yeah.
I could see that.
My local game store was not able to get cards for a while. Finally did, and I went
They
in
started
and spent,
reprinting them now. Yeah.
I spent a crap ton of store credit on buying all the starter decks and a box of the new expansion. But yeah, it's something I want to get into. I'm obviously occupied with the kiddo, but if I could at some point down the line cast Lorcana, that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah. Or if they have a tournament at a DreamHack or something, we'll see. But anyway, I think we've stalled long enough, and I think we need to talk about the news. So I think
don't
we should
wanna talk about
I don't
the
want to
news.
either, but I think we have to. So
Yeah.
let's go and do that.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
All right. So we're going to very quickly, before we start talking about the thing that we don't want to talk about, there have been a number of updates in terms of known issues that have been popping up this past week. We talked a lot about Velarok and Jotun being banned for the breaking the interaction with Castwind Drawn, and Velarok being unintentionally reverted. So they've fixed Jotun and ruined Velarok again by reverting it. So I would still expect Velarok's going to get touched in the next balance patch, which we're expecting sometime next week, though, the today's news may delay things, who knows.
Yeah.
But Velarok's back in all his glory, and if you're a Velarok enjoyer, I would get on that before he's gone. So also they fixed Kazakusan in duel, so Kazakusan will no longer delete your deck and abandon you in arena. So that is good. And they also have pushed out a client performance patch on Android devices. There will be a new client download that you'll have to get, but that should improve performance on certain Android devices. They didn't go into specifics, but I would imagine this is the kind of thing that you will know if it applies to you. and so go re-download the client, and things should be better. The day after we recorded, they banned Landlubber in Battlegrounds, which is add an extra spell to the shop? Was that what he was doing?
I forget.
Yeah.
It was some sort of insane spell combo. But yes, I'd have to look up exactly.
Yeah, if you play Battlegrounds, if you don't, then it doesn't really affect you anyway. School teachers Nogglings when you try to play Misfire or Heatwave, they just do nothing. So just be aware of that. So don't pick those. I was very surprised when that happened the first time, and then I was very happy when it happened to one of my opponents. So just if you're playing school teacher, which some of like the Highlander warriors do, then I don't know if people are playing a lot of school teacher in Mage, but stranger things have happened. And there was a bug that was causing Shadestone Skulker to infinite loop in Wild with, I think it wasn't Kingsbane. I think it was like there's a weapon that gains the death rattle of the last death rattle, or random death rattle of a death rattle minion that died. And then so Shadestone Skulker will give you the weapon back.
Necrium Blade says
Necrium Blade, thank you. So Shadestone Skulker says, give remove your weapon, or give your weapon to this. I don't remember how it's worded, and give it stats to this minion, and then on the death rattle, return the weapon. Well, I guess what was happening is that it was just going infinite and causing causing the game to hang up. They fixed part of it on the server side, so at least the game isn't going infinite, but apparently it's still fairly broken in that you're just gonna get you get a lot of the stats back. I don't know exactly what happens in Wild, but I think it's partially fixed, but it's still very, very good, is what I've heard.
It's still a lot of damage, but it doesn't actually
Yeah.
technically break the game.
Yeah.
So the loops have stopped, but there's still they couldn't fix it fully because they didn't wait for a client patch.
Right.
But you won't have the game completely hung up because somehow, the blade is triggering the death rattle of the thing that's giving the blade back to you.
Yeah.
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 Oh,
Yeah.
Wild.
Yep. So that's something just to be aware of if you're playing Wild. That's a thing that you're gonna have. I expect you will not have to deal with that until they will fix that in the next client patch. But I don't know if it's gonna be the next Balance patch or the next client patch, but they'll fix it the rest of the way. But it's only partially fixed. Okay, so that's the game stuff, the in-game stuff, and then we had this news today that Microsoft was laying off 1,900 staff from its video game workforce. Now, this includes all of the Xbox game division, which is Activision Blizzard. It's also Bethesda and like Microsoft Game Studios and everyone else that they've rolled up in their Katamari over the past couple of years. But 1,900 jobs is a massive, massive layoff. So part of it is that the untitled survival or unannounced survival game that we learned today was named Odyssey. Like that was canceled, and more or less that entire team was let go, which is a lot of people. They'd already been ramping up even as of 2022. They've been like doubling the size of that game. We knew that Matt London had gone to that. I believe Atesh also went to that. Those were both people who had announced that they were no longer with Blizzard as of today. There was also a number of folks let go on the Overwatch 2 team, which, Overwatch 2 has been kind of a, controversial and had been struggling for a while. I'm not sure exactly what state it's in right now, but certainly heard that a lot of folks from there, and we're still hearing things because, whenever you get news like this, it's basically people self-reporting. And apparently this was not well organized. Like they announced it to the public before they told everyone who was affected.
Or it was leaked, I think, to the
or
media.
it
It
was
came out
leaked,
on Verge first. And so people were like tweeting reporters, do you know if I'm still employed? And just talking to each other and not hearing anything for at least a few hours before we started to get tweets of people saying whether they were staying or not.
Yeah. And 1,900 people is really hard to get that organized with a layoff that size, just to be able to do this, humanely, I guess is the way to put it. But and so the one person we know who is worked closely with the Hearthstone team was Cynthia Park, who is the Hearthstone PR. So she's been let go. We've had interactions with her. She was really, really good at what she did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be a loss for the team. But it sounds like there haven't been too many other. There might have been more, more people who said something since the last time I looked this afternoon. But yeah,
not public. That was the only public-facing person I'm aware of. We know, for example, that most of the devs who the devs who we're familiar with, like Cora and why is my brain suddenly completely
Cora,
like
Minty Fresh, or or Celestial On, like they're all Deck Tech and Hat are both still there.
But there were quite a number of people, I believe, on less public facing roles, other parts of the team who were let go, also other parts of Blizzard that connect to Hearthstone, such as the merchandising and content team, which does the posts and announcement blogs and stuff like that. Apparently, 1/3 of that team was let go, including the lead of that. who is well known in the game industry. And so there are definitely, this is something that does affect Hearthstone, even though most of the people who we personally know are not those. And even, someone like Cynthia Park, I had not had the pleasure of getting to interact with her directly, but since I'm newer on the show, but heard nothing but good things about her from Hat, from Cora, from lots of people, and the outpouring of support on Twitter.
I mean, she was basically most of the time on calls with us, as kind of the just in case damage control, right? Being a PR person, making sure devs don't leak anything, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's weird, right? Having news like this. I am not surprised because this is very common with acquisitions or mergers.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of positions are considered overlap, right? Things like PR, HR, right, are very commonly the things that get cut. But hearing stuff like this whole game that, I don't know, even not knowing very much about it, I was kind of excited for a Blizzard survival game, and it's just not happening. It's crazy.
Yeah, and not only that, but just like they're just letting all those people go, right? Like there's no games get canceled all the time, right?
Sure.
Like that's just the thing that happens. But typically, you would find, those are talented developers. Probably your like, I don't want to say your most talented developers because I don't want to be reductive because everyone there is talented, but like these are people who are building something up from scratch. It's a different skill set, and like those are people who you want to keep, and like often like this is an opportunity that you have to keep people who would otherwise find a job elsewhere, right? And you want to have something new for them to work on to be able to keep them. And it just like to not even attempt to keep some of that talent and just let all of that talent go is just shocking. And it's compounded by the fact that Blizzard implemented mandatory return to work in July, meaning that there are a lot of people who were hired, during the pandemic or during the remote work era who uprooted their lives and moved to one of the most expensive, places to live in the country. And now they don't have the job that they moved there for. And now they've changed their lives. They're living there and with, they have severance, obviously they have to, but without a job and without job security, that's not even speaking to like, if any of them were here on work visas and now they have to navigate that, not having a steady job. So there's just like, it feels like even extra cruel to force everyone to come back into an office and uproot their lives when they were doing work that was just fine before. And then, okay, now you moved here, now we're laying you off. And I know that that's not necessarily the way it's happening for everybody, but it certainly does fit into there. Now it should be said, Mike Ybarra, who was the head of Blizzard, he quit. He resigned. Generally, when you're in an executive position, you're not going to be laid off this way. You're going to, so it's not clear if he was going to be targeted, if he was going to be impacted in the layoff, and that's basically giving him a way to leave gracefully, or if he left because he wasn't going along with it and, decided to leave. Like there's no real, that's not clear, but he's no longer with the company. And, also, there was also his name
the
is
Chief Design Officer Alan Adham, who was one of the co-founders of the company, of Blizzard specifically, has also left.
Which at this point it's kind of like, well, no one's left, right? Any semblance of what Blizzard was when it was created is gone, right? Like this is Microsoft now, and they're a $3 trillion company. So I believe they are the most valuable company. I think they passed Apple. So it's just extra insult to injury. Even if it's common business practice and stuff, these business practices are ruthless. Like, I can't imagine as well with you think of a good game developing company, right, where people have this freedom and desire of like, hey, if you are interested in another project, you go work on that game. You were interested in Odyssey, you went to work on it, and you're like, gosh, I wish I hadn't done that. Maybe if I hadn't changed teams, I would still have a job, right? Like, what the heck?
Yeah. That really discourages people from seeking things, but also makes people feel a lot less. This is the second round of layoffs that has impacted people on the Hearthstone team in the past 4 months. And even people who are still there, even though, the game appears to be doing well, the feeling of security that you would have would really be shaken by that, by seeing, the survivor's guilt, and also just not really knowing what is safe or whether you can go somewhere else, but can you stay here? And so even though, yes, we had an acquisition, they're trying to cut stuff down, this really impacts people on the team. It really impacts the morale of the people who remain, and can sometimes lead to other talent going elsewhere. Although the amount of layoffs they've had in the game industry in general, I would not want to be in that space looking for a job. There was a survey that like 1/3 of people were at a company where there was layoffs who work in the industry.
It's so weird though, because it almost feels like recycling. There'll be this layoffs from everywhere, but then everyone's hiring again, and like people will just go to different game companies, and I guess maybe getting paid less, more. It's so weird and unclear.
Or they're hiring for different positions. But like I was thinking that too, because like, so several days ago, Riot just laid off 550 people, right? And I remembered seeing somebody from Blizzard tweeting out, hey, if you just got laid off from Riot, come, we have some openings on my team. Like, why are you hiring if you're about to lay off 1,900 people? Why do you not have a hiring freeze? And why are you not considering the people who you already have in the building to reassign them?
They probably didn't know.
Yeah.
No. But I mean, like, as a company, right? Like I've been like, I'm, enough of a manager to know at least a little bit about how this stuff works. And like, like there have been, I've been through more hiring freezes than I could count, right? When things started looking like they were going to get, like things were going to go on a downturn for whatever reason, right? And, but, you're not like actively hiring right before you lay off. Like, I mean, obviously they are, but that's what's bizarre about it, right? Is that, and it's, part of it is just because every public company is like needs to grow no matter what. So that means that you need to hire a bunch of people to achieve that growth. And then when things go bad, then you're stuck with all these people that you need to be, your resort is to cut back on some of that payroll for the things that didn't work out. And then you're disrupting people. And it's just like, I've been hearing more talk this week than I have in a while about like the entire video game industry need to unionize to just keep this from happening. Because like, where do you go? Right. Like if you were laid off this week, like, and I don't mean to make this doom and gloom for those folks. I certainly don't want to be rubbing salt in anybody's wounds, but like, if you were going to be looking for a new job, like where are you going to go to feel job security? Like everybody's laying off, and it doesn't feel like the games are like the gaming industry is really struggling. That's what's weird about it. Right. Like nobody's really like flopped. Like, so every so often you have a studio that closes, right? Because they made a game and it didn't work out. I mean, we've had,
but not these studios,
not these
big ones.
Yeah.
It almost seems like companies see other companies doing it and are like, oh, we don't want to end up with too many people. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have never been in upper or any, I've never been in management in general. So I don't really, can't really say what's going on, but it certainly from the ground seems, again, with an acquisition and merger, it's a little bit more expected, but the scale of this across the game industry, and this is an industry where, in part because it is a passion industry for many people, that almost makes it more important to, just like acting, there's a union because otherwise it would be really, really difficult. This is an industry where, because there's so many people who are really, potentially willing to take worse conditions to work in this industry, it becomes important to, I don't know exactly what can be done, but I don't think this is helpful for companies. I don't think this is sustainable for people.
I mean, I think you get to a certain point of high up that things are just numbers to you.
Yeah.
Right? That it's no longer, oh, this many people's lives, jobs. Like it's just, this is how business is done. And like you mentioned unions, I think this is, we go through waves as a society of like how prevalent unions and things are or not. And we've seen some big surges in, Starbucks unionizing. Of course, they're fighting that. I heard, side tangent, Starbucks is doing like a barista cup or something. I don't know, some kind of like competition for baristas. Very, heavy promotion because they want people to feel good about what they do because they don't want them to unionize, right? Like, and we've just had so many years of not having strong unions in all these new areas, and all the companies are big into like preventing unions from forming. But it seems like we really need them in in a lot of these types of companies, or this stuff just keeps happening.
Well, it just feels like it can't be what really helps employees do their best work to constantly, the amount of grind, the amount of layoffs, again, even in companies often which are not having acquisitions and mergers, which is part of what's happening here, or having your whole game just cut out from under you with no shuffling somewhere else. There's a need for people to feel valued, and that's not something that you can just trust a company to do for you necessarily.
Their careers page has not been updated. There is still a position for associate production director, technology unannounced survival project. I assume that's not actually.
So that's the thing, right? Is that they were still hiring as of this week for that project, and obviously those folks aren't going to know. But it's just a complete shock, and it just feels unimaginably cruel. And even to the folks who aren't impacted directly, it shakes you, right? Like I've survived. I've never been laid off. Thankfully, I've survived several, and I mean, certainly it destroys productivity for a short term, but it's just especially when there's nothing you could have done about it. It's not like you could have done a better job, right? You don't even know what the reasons are a lot of the time. Maybe your salary was too high and they felt like they could get somebody to do your job cheaper, or maybe it's, you were on the wrong project, right? That went south, and then they just decided to cut that project and not find find anything else for you to do. But it's I hate seeing, folks that we've come to know as, as friends or friendly acquaintances at the minimum, right? Like we care about the people who make this game, beyond their ability to make a fun game. Obviously we want that, but we also want them to, feel valued and feel safe and be happy and fulfill with what they do. And then having to go through this and across the whole game industry. I mean, between the end of last year and the beginning of this year, just a staggering number of jobs being cut, when the industry itself seemed like it was doing fine from outward indications, right? It's just, I don't know what you do, but it makes me so sad, and it makes me so angry. And I don't really, I feel like there's something that, to do, but there's nothing to be done. It's like a tornado coming through.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, one thing on the, I think especially one thing that must be really frustrating, we got some details from Bloomberg on what may have been the issue with the unannounced survival game, which I'm sure is especially frustrating to a lot of the devs because I'm sure they kind of saw this coming, which was apparently a major factor may have been that they were struggling with the engine that they were using. They had started it on Unreal Engine, and then the Blizzard board had said, can you use the internal engine, Synapse, which had been originally developed for mobile games? And they said their reason given was, oh, we can make this allow more people to be in the like survival sort of Minecraft style server at the same time, eventually because we're developing this ourselves. But in practice, that didn't happen. They were having tremendous amount of technical issues. Devs were making stuff in Unreal to prototype it that they were just going to have to remake in Synapse, but that they couldn't make in Synapse yet. And then when Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard, apparently Mike Ybarra said that he was hopeful that Microsoft would let them go back to Unreal. And then maybe they could hire more, try to go for 2026, although apparently there were some people internally who were like, 2026 isn't going to happen either. But apparently someone at Microsoft looked at that and said, no, it's taking too long, too many problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are just coming in and basically being like, we're going to cut everything back to basics. And then we're going to do the things that we want to do in our way, right? And I don't know, they say there's some exciting new Blizzard projects. I don't know if that means they came in and saw stuff that was in more, baby stages that they're like, oh, this is a good idea. We can build on this. But I don't imagine we're getting anything new game-wise for quite a while in, Activision Blizzard.
Yeah, and I mean, there's something to be said for not necessarily wanting to be saddled with some of the decisions of the past management, especially the past board, right? Like that's something that if you're the new boss, right, you're going to go through and decide like what makes sense to you and what's not. It's just like the way that they're going about it, especially as a company that just had, hit a record-breaking net worth, right? A record-breaking valuation of 3 trillion. Like it always feels like these companies are doing fantastic right before they announce a cut like this. And there's a lot of talk about sustainability. Riot did the same thing when they laid a bunch of people off. They were talking about making things sustainable. They're pivoting Legend of Runeterra back to PvE again. They've flip-flopped back and forth between focusing on PvE, then PvP, then PvE, whatever, and then they're not doing any more Riot Forge stuff, but they're not canceling anything. They are, cutting back because they've just been spending a lot. Which, I mean, that happens, right? Like sometimes you just have some bets that don't pay off and you have to correct, but it's just the fact that they're betting so hard on these things that when it's just like they're just going all in on some of these things, and then they're whiffing, and then they're having to pay this enormous price, but they're not they're not really paying the price. Ultimately, it's all these individuals who have like given up. Riot also had a very strict return to office policy, as far as I understand. And, so you have a couple of these companies that are, saying, well, you need to come physically be here for a job that you're already doing fine remote, and, and just upending their lives by making them move across the country there, and then upending them again by taking away the job that they thought was secure that they were moving for.
Yeah. What kills me as well is just knowing that, like, from the dev side of things, they're like, we could use more people, right? Like,
always.
We are squeezed for our time and skills and everything, and we could really use more people to make these things as good as they can be, and then to instead have corporate cutting folks is just like, what's happening?
Yeah.
The team, it always surprises me, given how many players there are of Hearthstone, what the size of the team is.
Crew.
It's a really small crew already.
By comparison.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess made them a little bit, somewhat less impacted because
resilient, as long as you
yeah,
hadn't left.
or they're I mean they're
Team
lean,
5.
right? So they're profitable, right? So that makes it.
Yeah.
But you can't always control that, and yeah, it's. I feel bad for anybody who's just trying to work in games and like because like that's something that people do because they love and like it's not like a lot of the folks who are doing it like they're not they don't know how to necessarily know how to do it anything else, but that's what they want to do,
Mhm.
right? And because like I keep seeing some people saying, well, how would anybody work in the game industry after this? I'm like, have you met anybody who works in the game industry? Like they're doing this because they love it. Like they like it helps that they're getting paid, but they're doing this because that's what they love to do.
I mean, I
And
don't
it's
doubt that
just,
some of the, not directly dev people will maybe go to not gaming companies, right?
Oh, yeah,
if you're
yeah.
a PR or HR person, someone not
or legal or whatever. Yeah.
right. Maybe you say, okay, that was a fun experiment. I'm not going back.
Or even software engineers. That's what my brother did. He has a degree in game design and game development. He has a programming background. He was looking for jobs in games during another period of massive layoffs in the industry and said, how can I possibly compete in this? And also just is not someone who thrives in kind of crunch situations. So found a much more boring but much more stable software job.
Yeah.
Not that industry is always the smoothest sailing either, but so for people who've weathered that, people who are in games despite everything are people who really, really are passionate about it.
I mean, my brother has generally worked in startups, and I always thought that felt like madness because, it's like, yeah, they ran out of money, or got acquired and then laid off, same situation, right? So he's gone through some of this stuff from the startup world, like it does not seem as bad anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I like the work I'm doing in corporate IT is not always the most exciting, but I've been at the same job for a long time and I've, and it's not as chaotic as this, but I mean, also like, those are things that people are, you're like, that's kind of the case going in to some extent. You're hoping that it doesn't affect you like this, but like, there's a lot of things that, people will put up with to work in games but they shouldn't have to, I think is what it comes down to. And just today's a really sad, frustrating day.
It's always really difficult when people say, well, this is the way, as a teacher, it's experience this from a different side when, well, to do what you love, you should just deal with all this stuff. Is never something that you want to hear as a worker.
Don't get me started on the, I have so many thoughts about the way we've been teaching people that they should turn what they love into a job because we need tradespeople like more than ever now. And that's a whole other thing. So to dodge that whole rant, lecture, whatever you want to call it, let's talk about esports.
Oh yeah, because that'll
like
cheer us up. Yeah.
Honestly, kind of.
It's the grand tournament.
And we thought that this was going to be the frustrating news, the most frustrating news we're going to be talking about today. But yeah.
Oh, we thought the esports was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I have a much lighter tone for esports announcement now. Yeah. This is happy news, honestly, this esports announcement in retrospect. So we got the news for Hearthstone Esports in 2024. I am so sorry, Battlegrounds players. Lobby Legends is not returning. They didn't even mention it in the blog post, I think. And
no, they didn't.
We had to ask, like, can we tell people it's dead? And they're like, yeah, okay. So it just wasn't getting enough viewership for them to justify, I guess. And so they cut it. There's also one fewer Masters Tour. There's a spring championship and a summer championship and then Worlds. So that is to basically align with the expansions. We've talked about how esports is basically being justified as promotion for the new cards. This is even more in line with that. So each of these is going to correspond to an expansion, no more, no less. Kind of kills my hopes for maybe we were moving to 4 expansions a year, no mini sets, but
or having 4 Worlds at BlizzCon, which doesn't line up
Right.
with the new expansion because the new expansion isn't out yet when BlizzCon comes around.
Yeah.
Well, although they do seem to come up with the esports for the next year very last minute every year, so I wouldn't necessarily say this portends to
yeah.
more than this year.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the thing that we keep building up our hopes on, right? Is like, well, next year maybe they'll figure things out. And we have been in this weird transitional period, right, where they were thinking, okay, we're going to get acquired, we're ending this old system, but we still want to have an esport so that people don't say dead game. But I just like, I can only hold on to the slim hope of, hey, maybe once Microsoft really gets the chance to dig their teeth in and look at this, maybe they'll make a different decision. Like, obviously, their mind has been on other, more unfortunate things.
Yeah.
So, we'll have to see. But for now, it's not gone. So, we can check that box. Soddle and Raven did not cast the last Hearthstone Esports last year. Was a thought that crossed our minds, but it wasn't the case.
This is literally better than nothing. That is...
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the other silver lining, I will say, there are more months which don't count, so you get a break.
Yes.
Although, you do still want to keep your MMR up so it's not harder to climb the next. But
That's true.
You don't have to kill yourself as many months. So...
But if you just don't play for that month, then you don't have to, then your MMR
yeah,
doesn't
that's
stay.
true. That's true. But yeah, it's still very much a grind. There's no opens. And I mean, honestly, this is like begging for someone to jump in and like run opens. I wish that like now was the time that I was like running tournaments at Nerd Street and doing entry fee qualifiers, right? Like, oh my God, it's this would be the time to build a third party circuit. Although I think there may have been some question of like whether we would be allowed to. No, this is what it was. The problem that I had when I was running events for Nerd Street is that we had the open cups, right? So there were open cups every weekend. They were free to enter, so people were just playing in those to compete in the main system. Now it's just ladder. So if we were doing our like paid entry fee events now, oh my God, we'd be the only game in town. Like,
I mean, as long as you weren't doing it in a month where people would have to be grinding ladder to try to make it into the Masters Tour, right? Because like that was always the problem with some of those like third-party circuits is like you would be competing even before when we had opens, you would be competing with people who were doing qualifiers every weekend, right? So like, why would I play in this tournament with a middling cash prize when I could be playing in an open and then get myself into a Masters Tour? And then once you get past that, then it's like, in last year's system, I mean, it's going to be for a lot less people, but for the people who wanted to compete in the Masters Tour, they had to be playing constantly. Now you at least have like some breaks in the system to get some of the top players and get some draw there.
But see, the ladder system causes some percentage of players that would be competitive to give up.
Well,
right?
That's true too. Yeah.
So those people could then turn around and look at a third party tournament that was entry fee and be like, yeah, I'm free. I'll do a tournament. I'm not on that grind, right? To get top 10, which it feels like you kind of have to get top 10 each month. So if anyone is out there with the resources, the manpower to run some entry fee Hearthstone qualifiers, I beg of you.
Yeah. I guess the other problem is also just getting funding for it, right? Because like, how are you making money? Like, if advertising was something that was attractive, like they tried it a while ago, right? Like if they could attract advertisers to the Masters Tours, they would. right? I mean, that's something that League of Legends does. That's something that I
This
don't
is
know
why
if
I say
Overwatch
entry
League
fee.
did or not. Yeah.
Like it's something that has been so removed from Hearthstone, right? Because when all you have is an official thing that says nothing is ever entry fee, then people are used to that and get all up, weird feelings about it. Fighting game community has been doing entry fees forever. And
Yeah.
like original Magic competitions, $25 to enter a
Yeah.
Grand Prix. So like I just think we need to return to like, yeah, you pay to enter tournaments and that money goes to the prize pool. And like sometimes that's not gonna cut it, right? When it comes down to like as things get scaled bigger, right? Then there's more people that need to get paid to run things. But at a certain level, right, you can do pretty decent size events that way. A 64-person bracket with like 1-2 people running it who take some cut of the entry fee, and then the rest of it goes to prize pool. Like
maybe you pay for one or two production people and 2 to 4 casters if you wanted to stream it.
I mean, it's tough, right? Clark knows how tough it was when he ran his Clark Cup thing. He did not do entry fee for that, right? It was just like an invitational, and then later I think he didn't open, right? It was more kind of paying people what he could. But I think entry fees can totally just reshape what's possible. No, it's not going to be as big as like having someone who just says, here's the prize pool that we're willing to shell out.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to be like the dream hacks that were, what was it, like 25K events or something? I forget what it was.
It was enough money to matter. I don't remember exactly how much it was, but it was enough money to matter.
Like you may not be able to reach the levels of people, making a living doing it, but you can have the grassroots scene. And
yeah,
just hasn't been happening.
Certainly something I'd love to see.
We need somebody who, has Bemi's enthusiasm and work ethic. May they rest in peace.
I mean, if I did not have a child, I would be doing this. Yeah. I'd have experience doing this. And, there was some hope that maybe we could get something on the creator side of things, right? Part of so it wouldn't be coming out of an esports budget. It would be coming out of a marketing budget or hats end of things, right? We've definitely seen invitationals and stuff before. The thing is, there were systems in place that Alkali was pushing for, and then when Alkali left, they kind of ceased. So I think we just have to kind of wait and see what people can come up with. And in the meantime, we've got THL.
Yeah. Have they done an invitational since like March of the Lich King? I don't think they have.
I don't think so. No, I think Garrett cast the last invitational, which is wild. Yeah, I am like glad that I still am going to be able to cast, that there's still something happening. What would be really nice, but I don't know if this is possibly going to happen, but we didn't cover all the matches when we were doing our 2-day coverage, right? Some of the matches happened off broadcast. It would be really great if they could give us 3 days.
Yeah.
So that we could at least cover all the matches, since there's one fewer Masters Tour. Maybe that's a pipe dream, but I would love if that happened.
Yeah. I mean, it can't. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit more expensive because you're paying people for 3 days instead of 2, but it can't be that much more.
I mean, it's just, honestly, caster talent wise, it's the same because they cut a Masters Tour.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe a little bit more. And then, they cut the prize pool that would have gone to that Masters Tour as well.
Yeah.
So it's there, theoretically. Who knows?
It would be nice to get all of those players on stream, right? Like,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Gosh, if you're going to grind that much, I feel like you deserve the screen time as much as you can get.
Yeah, maybe like some interview spots just to, get to know them a little bit outside of, like obviously pre-taped, like we don't need another, Hong Kong situation, but if we could get like some of the like the in between match, like produced interviews to get to know some of these players, I think that, especially the ones who don't make it all the way to Worlds, right?
Right.
I think that would make a huge difference in the viewer experience, especially if you are not super tuned into the online community, but you just want to watch some tournaments, which is the group of people we want to be reaching. I think it makes a big difference to feel like you have some reason to root for someone or just know something about them. And also, not every person there is a huge social media presence or wants to be, or a streamer, right? And it would help to know something about them as well. And to know something about people from other regions, I never know as much about like the APAC players.
Well, I mean, or even America's, nobody knew anything about WeQ.
Yeah, like we didn't know WeQ had a face until Worlds.
Like this player took Banter's spot, right? Like, or I feel like that puts it in a bad light. Like this person that far fewer of us knew managed to qualify over Banter, and Banter streams, WeQ doesn't. Nobody knew anything about him. More screen time would be great. I should get into some of the more specifics of this. So there's going to be $50,000 prize pool once again for the spring and summer championships, and the top 2 from each of those will qualify for the world championship. And so that means total of 4 players qualify from championships, and then other players are going to qualify from points. So once again, just 8 people at Worlds. In terms of how those points work, you've got 16 players will receive invites per season to the championships. Rank 1 gets 8 points, 2 to 5, 7 points, 6 through 10, 6 points, 11 to 20, 5 points, and so on. You got all the way to 51 to 100 gets 1 point. Really, it's largely like top 20 that matters. Maybe top 30, right? Like you've got to have a big finish and then not bomb another one. Top 4 competitive points earners from each region, followed by the top 4 competitive points earners globally. Tiebreaker, highest ladder finish in any 1 month, right? So, it's going to be month-wise, February, March, June, July, October, and November. So, not quite so many months. And with, you got April, May off, August, September off. But yeah, the fact that November counts is why we've basically determined that there is not going to be a World Championship at BlizzCon. Maybe there'll be a invitational of some kind.
Global
that
games.
would be great.
Let's bring back global games.
I mean, whatever. just invite 8 content creators to play against each other and just have something we can watch besides Overwatch, which Overwatch got great esports stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah, they got a whole thing with ESL, and they're gonna have LAN majors at DreamHacks, and it was unfortunate that news came out like literally an hour before this, because I think it got people's hopes up a little. Like, there's gonna be LANs and there's gonna be majors, and it's gonna be, and then there was this, which was basically, here's last year's system with 1 less Masters Tour, and you get a break. And
look, there are so many times where I'm just like, oh, people think Hearthstone is Warcraft, right? Like you'll be filling out stuff for Blizzard, and it's like, pick the game, and I'm like, Hearthstone's not there. I guess I say Warcraft. So I can't say I'm terribly surprised. But
yeah. Overwatch had like 2 halls.
Yeah.
At BlizzCon.
Yeah. It's just a little dirty. It's still good.
I mean, fingers crossed for the 10-year anniversary, right? That we'll get something spicy.
Yeah.
We know we've got Battlegrounds duos coming up with it, which I have to say is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Some people are concerned, but it's just super fun, right? I'm going to grab my brother and be playing this with him. It'll just be delightful. People have said how fun spells are. I haven't touched BGs just because I feel like there's been so much to do in standard, but yeah. I mean, when it comes to competitive, you got THL. There have been some other cups. I've made like there weren't any. There some, but like you have to really.
Rain runs
dig
cups.
around.
Baby Bear runs the Proteus tournaments occasionally.
If you're in Europe, right? If you're in France, especially, there's the Solary.
Yeah,
that's kind of it. But
can we just outsource like to Solary then? Like, they do lands. Like we could, just outsource the events. Like if you get knocked out of the Masters Tour, you get thrown in the pool. It's.
I wish DreamHack would take us back. No, like I'm in this weird position where I'm just like, I want to go to DreamHacks and Magic Cons to play Magic to satisfy that competitive itch. And I've been thinking, I'm like, maybe I'll compete in Lorcana stuff when that happens. Like it's just weird to sort of return to, I guess I'm gonna compete in paper thing. Well, Magic, I would be competing in draft side events. That's really where I have better luck of having an impact. But yeah, I mean, it really is tough having competed in some of the earlier system stuff to just be like holding my breath and waiting and hoping, right? That like
it's always next year.
Next year at BlizzCon. Yeah, it's
yeah.
Yeah. Next, what would it be? Next year in Irvine? I don't know.
Yeah. It's and in light of the other news today, right? Then this is they're still investing in esports. Like they clearly are cutting a lot of things that they don't believe are the way forward. Right? Like even though this is a shadow of its former self, they still believe that esports is worth continuing with, right? When a lot of other things did get cut. So maybe that's something to build on. I mean, I don't think it's never going to be like League, right? I think that ship has sailed. I mean, it's not even going to be TFT, right? Like they've been making a lot of investment into TFT esports and like the production there but I mean, we still have something to look forward to. And the important thing is we don't have to change the tagline of the show yet. So that's the most important thing.
I mean, look, I don't think we ever really have to because our folks are more competing in like THL stuff.
Yeah, sure.
But it is different. It's a different tone, it's a different sort of flavor of competition. And I think I'm just glad that they haven't cut the program because once there's nothing, then it really starts to feel like, well, what does competitive Hearthstone even mean, right?
Right.
I think that's something that is being felt right now on the battleground side, and also if you have nothing, it's harder to hope for to build something back up in the future. Whereas if you have something, it feels a little bit more possible. I don't know whether that will actually happen, and I certainly wouldn't cross my fingers for huge in-person events, but I don't. That's not. I'm just again happy that we have in Constructed that we have something. I think the loss of Lobby Legends is definitely a blow to the Battlegrounds community.
Yeah, and I guess it's worth just reiterating, like esports as a whole is going through a pretty big contraction. Like like even with like I don't think they're doing Runeterra. I mean, Runeterra is a whole other. That's kind of a whole lost cause anyway. But
there are other problems there.
There's a big contraction in like LCS, in over on the league side. Like they are investing in TFT, but that's still only a couple of tournaments that they're doing, and they've only done like one LAN. Like and like a lot of the esports like organizations have been having a lot of layoffs as well. So there is definitely like an esports contraction. It's a pretty clear from the landscape that esports can't really exist on its own, merits. Like there, you don't have the kind of VCs that are dumping money in anymore. Like the advertising dollars really aren't there. There's
It
a
was a
lot,
bubble, right?
yeah, yeah,
Esports was a bubble. There was a lot of VC money, a lot of investment with certain expectations. And the sad truth of it is that, the investors just, it wasn't there. It didn't pay off for them, whatever. In my head, I'm like, it wasn't ready, right? Like it
yeah,
got oversaturated too quickly, and we haven't had enough generations of people growing up on esports to support like that, like having enough viewership for that, right? Like you compare how many people watch the World Cup to how many people watch the League of Legends World Championship. League of Legends is massive. It's nothing.
right.
Nothing compared to, and to build up that kind of following would take time, even though the number of people who play video games in their spare time, especially adults, I think is much more than most people who play regular sports in their spare time, but people are much more likely to watch the World Cup.
Right. And there's a lot of different games that people want to compete in, want esports for and things. So it is, that audience is going to get broken up by people who are into this more range of games.
Right. More than traditional sports.
Yeah.
But I think, I wonder sometimes if we'll even get the chance to know if things could have been different with, or still could end up being different after a few more decades, right?
Right.
Where you've got people just growing up with video games and esports as like just a thing, or will it not get the chance, right? And honestly, I feel like Overwatch was just like 3 to 5 years too early with the Overwatch League thing, and with different cities having teams. That's what I mean, right? Like, say they went for that in 2025. Once all that's mostly blown over, and people are hyped to get into arenas and see this stuff live, I think it could have been a completely different outcome, right? And they just sort of got screwed.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think back to like around 10 years ago was when I started like the general video game podcast that I was on, like long before Hearthstone, right? And I remember us like early days talking about Twitch in 2014. And like, as somebody who has played video games for my entire life, I did not at the time even understand the concept of Twitch, right? Like that, which is a far cry from right now, right? So like even like esports is something that's become more accepted and more understood, but it's also gone through a hype cycle, and then it's going to be who's surviving it. And but I think that it's I do like Riot's approach to it, which is that it's not marketing the product, but it's more building more engagement with the players that you have to get them to to be more invested personally, to and then they are more, it's more like customer loyalty rather than customer acquisition.
And I think that makes more sense anyway, because it's really hard to watch an esport that you don't know anything about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. It's something that you watch when you are invested in a game, and maybe it helps you become more invested in a game. And that's certainly what happened for me with Hearthstone, that the watching the tournaments was something that helped spark my interest in becoming more competitive, and becoming more competitive kept me into the game on a much longer term basis than I think I would have been otherwise. And for people who are playing at a higher level, the possibility of, when you had bigger open qualifiers, I think that was keeping some people invested in the game. But even if it's just watching, as something that drives engagement of players just makes more sense to me than we're going to get, even if you know about Magic the Gathering and you drop into a Masters Tour, even with incredible casting, you're still going to be like, what's happening on the screen in front of me?
You can know about Magic the Gathering and watch a Magic tournament and not be able to follow what's going on. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, card games in particular can be tough with the number of mechanics and things, but I just feel like we know that it's possible because we've seen large viewership numbers before with Hearthstone in terms of its world championship at previous times in the lifespan of HS Esports. So hopefully one day we can return to that glory. But I think, honestly, we probably have got let a little bit too much of our feelings out. This is still a pretty long episode. But that is going to do it for us today. We have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at Concede.com, where you can also find our contact info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/CoinConcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. And write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at CoinConcede, as well as like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/CoinConcede. If you would like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producers, Number Theory, Crash, Beef Squatch, David P., Walu, Jeremy T., Bottlecaps, Grumpy Monk, The Burger Club, Kirk Regan, Forgiven One, Grizzly Bear, and The Grand Arcanum. And thank you to, I don't know how this is meant to be said, but I'm going to say J Pacosm247 for the sub during the show. And then Coin Concedes. I guess why don't you start?
I'm going to, besides, of course, we've talked a lot about people affected by layoffs. But in a happier Coin Concede, to the people in the Warlock build Deck Lab forum thread, especially Scoobd, World 8, of course, and Donkey, really been contributing to lots of discussion about cool builds, and Scoobd broke top 100, which is pretty impressive with their list. So
that's one Masters Tour point.
Yeah. Yeah, Scoobd, if you're still there, that's a Masters Tour point.
Not in January.
That's true. Just keep it up. One more month. Surely no one will touch Sludge Warlock for the whole month, and you'll be fine.
We good?
Well, I'm going to Coin Concede to my oldest daughter, who is making me miss my stream on Monday night because she's getting inducted in National Honor Society. So that is as good of a reason as I can have for missing a stream. So I am happy to miss that if that's the reason. So, but yeah, really proud of her. And, I don't think she realizes it's a big deal. Like, she's just like, yeah, whatever. I think I was that way at that age too. When I was in National Honor Society, it's like, okay, well, I just, I got good grades and I did it, like whatever, but it is a big deal. So whether she realizes it or not right now, it is a big deal. And we're really proud of her. So, that's why I'm willing to take my life in my hands, getting her driving lessons on the weekends now, which is a thing that I've signed up to do. So, what about you, Edel?
I suppose I am going to Coin Concede to an author, actually, Travis Baldwin, who has one book that I read a while back called Legends and Lattes, and came out with a prequel book. I think people love that other one so much. I don't think there was an intent to continue, but he's now got a prequel story that, while that one takes place kind of at the end of the adventuring journey of the main character, this one is when she gets injured towards the beginning of her adventuring career. It's called Bookshops and Bone Dust. She gets injured and is stuck in this town where not much is going on, and ends up befriending the owner of a bookshop. So it's like, I wonder if this is going to become just like a new genre that is cozy fantasy, right? Where it's like
there's a demand for that, I'm sure.
there's like maybe some conflict beats but like largely it's not action. It's just about like the connections between the people and like building up a business in a way, right? In Legends and Lattes, she's like making her own coffee shop and people are like, what the heck is coffee, right? In this fantasy world. And in Bookshops and Bone Dust, she's like helping this ratkin who inherited the bookshop from her dad to try and like rebuild the business. And there's also a necromancer they have to defeat, but that just kind of like happens, it's not really exactly the main conflict of the story, right? Like it's part of the journey, but the real victory is like turning around this book business. It's really, really great, and particularly with some of the hard stuff going on. Yeah, I was needing some cozy in my life.
Yeah.
So
sometimes you just need some cozy in your life.
Yeah. Cozy is good, but that's gonna do it for us for this week. So until next time, keep calm and tell a dev you appreciate them. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
All life must end. I yield for now. I concede. Well fought. I concede.
You win this one.
The victory is yours.
You have bested him.
I give up.
You win this one, friend.